And then Naomi, you can also just mute folks if you want. Thank you. All right, so welcome folks. Thanks for joining us today. So I'm going to give people just one more minute to come in, but as you do, I will put in the chat box a link to our website so you guys can get started looking at some resources, and then I'll introduce everybody in just about 1 minute. Okay, so I hear people coming in, and I see people coming in, which is awesome. I'm going to put in the chat box the website for our where you can find more links to the things we'll be talking about today. But I will start with welcoming us, and let me get the slide deck up. Okay. Oops, wrong slide. So thank you for being here today. We're very excited to just share with the San Mateo County community our overview to outdoor learning as part of a COVID-19 recovery plan. And it'd be great for folks to just get a sense of who's here today. So if you wouldn't mind just renaming yourself with your first name, your last name, and the organization or school community that you're most connected to, then we can get a sense of who's here. And you can also just put in the chat box right now, you can just say, hi, this is who I am, and here's where I'm coming from, just so people can get a sense of who's here from around our county. Okay, so great to see that coming in from different folks around the county and different parts, from charter schools and public schools and community-based partners. Got some parents here. So it's awesome to have you all here today. So here's a little overview of what we'll be talking about. So I will do a little bit of the overview to the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative and talk about some of the resources that you can use to get started in thinking about outdoor learning. Then we have a couple of guest speakers here on the call who will share some examples from San Mateo County. And then at the end, we'll share how you can get some customized technical assistance support from our county. So it's definitely going to be a lot of listening, but we'll also pause here and there for people to ask questions as well. So let me talk first about this National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative. So San Mateo County Office of Education, oh, I should introduce myself with my name. So I'm Andrea Goyen. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator here at the San Mateo County Office of Ed. And we are part of this national partnership that's looking at and exploring how can you use outdoor classrooms and outdoor learning as part of the COVID-19 recovery plan. And in this partnership, we have Green Schoolyards America, the Lawrence Hall of Science, and 10 Strands as well. And so all these organizations, we've been really working together with folks from across the country to really think about what are the best practices here and what can we do. So I'll share a little bit about this initiative, which is really driving the support for this webinar. So in this initiative, we're really thinking about how to use outdoor spaces as a strategic and cost-effective tool to increase capacity on school sites to open up with distance learning measures in place. And sometimes this will be on your school site, or there's also the possibility of partnering with local parks and places that can provide fresh air and hands-on learning opportunities. This initiative is really thinking about how to use the strategy of reframing outdoor learning as plan A and indoor learning as plan B, so that you would mostly be learning outdoors and then only going indoors due to weather and other kind of constraints that really force you to go inside. So we're looking at how to create plans at the school and district level to move as many classes outside as possible, and really trying to leverage low-cost temporary materials and figuring out how to help people plan for weather, and also providing other types of infrastructure support. And of course, we know some of you are here thinking like, well, maybe our goal is not to get all kids outdoors all the time, but maybe it's to get a bunch of kids outdoors half the time, or to really just start to use the outdoor space a little bit better on your campus. So we're talking about all the different possibilities. It's just that this national initiative is really focused around as many kids as possible. There is historic precedent for doing this during a pandemic. So about 100 years ago, schools around the world went outside to reduce the spread of tuberculosis and Spanish flu. And you can see that link down here at the bottom. The media library of our national initiative page has a lot of links that really explore that. It also has links for today's research around reducing the transmission of this virus, of COVID-19, outdoors, and how outdoor learning has been really successful in other countries. So we highly recommend it. Also, just this idea of the connection to academic and mental health improvements. So again, there's a lot of resources on that website that you can access. And then Naomi, if you don't mind putting that website in the chat box, that would be great too, so people can see that. The National Outdoor Group is made up of a bunch of different working groups that are really looking to figure out all these different pieces of how to do outdoor learning and how to do it really effectively. So we have got groups focused around infrastructure, figuring out partnerships, figuring out what kind of staffing you might need to do this, and then other issues like policy and health and safety. And then we have a group that all those different groups are serving, which is people who are looking to be early adopters. And within the early adopters, we have quite a few from San Mateo County who are involved in that work. So we're excited to have more folks from San Mateo County kind of joining into the conversation. So what are the tools that are available for you to get started on this work? So as part of the national initiative, we've put together a planning guide and also example case studies. So the guidance for planning is really about helping people put together the language that's needed to really think through how do you get buy-in from the community, but also the process that you want to go through in order to start that planning at your school site. We also have example case studies from Los Angeles, from San Francisco, and Northern Virginia. And then Naomi's going to share one of those case studies with the whole group today that's from San Bruno Park School District as well. So here's just an example of what we mean by case study. So here you can see in Northern Virginia, they were looking at the school site thinking, okay, how do we really leverage this to get as many of these students as possible on campus? And they first went around and did a site level analysis to see like what did they already have in place. And then they started to map out the potential areas for where they could do outdoor classrooms. And you can see each case study has a low cost scenario, and then a moderate cost scenario, and then one where you're making infrastructure investments that are more long-term, like 5 to 10 years. So that is what the case study looks like. And like I said, we're starting to develop those case studies here in our county so that people can get a sense of what that looks like locally. We also have a number of tools available to folks from this national initiative. So you can see here on the screen a link to the cost calculator tool, which you can access down here. And part of this cost calculation is really trying to figure out like what might you need in terms of seating, shelter, health and hygiene needs, outdoor teaching materials, landscape improvement, or things like mobile outdoor classroom gear. Because if you're looking to get kids outside, you're going to really need to consider all these different things. So I'll just give you a couple quick examples. When it comes to seating, one important thing to think through is like what's going to be the configuration of how students would sit in an outdoor space using physical distancing and doing our 4 pillars from our San Mateo County recovery framework. And then also, what are they actually going to be sitting on, right? So this kind of, all the different tools you'll see are really balancing out how do we bring that framework into action so that kids are social distancing, they're wearing their masks, they're doing this, but that they're also comfortable and able to learn. So there's a lot of different options that range from lower cost things like hay bales and log grounds to putting in more permanent infrastructure, or even things that are mobile like these cushions and chairs. Also, some things that people might need to consider is shelter. So we have a really moderate climate here, but you're definitely going to need shelter for shade, and then also occasionally for things like rain. So, and if it gets too cold or too hot, right, you can consider heaters and fans. So the cost tool will help you kind of analyze what could all that add up to. And a few other things to consider here are things like what might students need to bring. So if you need clipboards or pencils or hats, and also teaching supplies for teachers as well. So I highly recommend taking a look at that cost tool so that you can start playing around with the numbers and seeing what's possible. And of course, starting with what you already have is the best starting place because that's going to be your lowest cost options. A couple of the things that we have that are accessible to you, and this slide deck is posted on the website, so you can access that and all the links that have been embedded within it. So we've drafted a tool that helps you do your own site level analysis, and it helps you kind of walk through and start to like check off what are the things that I should be looking for, what are the existing assets, and where might we need more. So that's a tool that's available to you, and we've piloted it, and we're constantly updating it and changing it. So right now it's as a Google Doc. And then at some point, once we're done piloting it a number of times, it'll be set as a PDF. We also have a couple other resources available to you that are really local for San Mateo County folks. So one is this local vendors list. Let me see if I can click on that. And it'll take us to here where you can actually get started on contacting local vendors who have some of those supplies that you saw above or saw me already share. So if you're looking for things like soil or compost or lumber or like logs for seeding or things for plants, then you can get some of that. And we also have tree service folks. So you can get a sense that there's a lot of local vendors to reach out to do this work. And one other thing that we have for people who also recognize that they want to do some planting alongside of an outdoor classroom, we also have some recommendations for plant selections that you could consider in our county. So those are some of the resources available to you from the resource tools. And then going back up to the national initiative, we also are building out case studies and concepts for how to do this with staffing. So that first I showed you the infrastructure side, now I'll show you the staffing side. We've got a number of case studies from community-based partners, 2 that you'll hear today, who have already been doing programming this summer and have done it really successfully. And we have a number of community-based partners who are interested in supporting as on-site staff or interested in partnering and staffing like a local park to make this work for you. So that is going to be a great opportunity for folks. And they are all experts in helping students learn from the outdoors. We also have resources to help schools think about how to just do learning within the outdoors, right? So that's like taking any subject area outside, using specialist groups and breakout groups, and just moving them to the outdoors. So that means that you're not doing lessons about the nature and the wildlife that you're seeing outdoors. You're just doing regular lessons. You just happen to be outdoors. And I did this myself as a 7th grade English teacher. I taught in a 1-to-1 laptop program in Pleasanton in the Tri-Valley. And I had an outdoor classroom right outside my door, and my periods were 90 minutes long, which is pretty long to be with your students each day for English. So we committed to doing Monday and Friday outdoors every single week of the school year. And it wasn't that we always learned from the outdoors. We did a lot of lessons that were just us outside reading, writing, having discussions, doing social and emotional lessons. And it was a really incredible experience for me to see the kids just make that a regular routine and do it and be so successful. And it was one of their favorite things from the end of the school year, was just getting that much time outdoors. So I do recommend this as not just a learning from the outdoors, but also learning within the outdoors opportunity. So I'm going to pause there before we get into our examples and see what kind of, if any questions have come up. And Naomi, help me know if there was anything that came up in the chat box that I should address.
So far, it's just been about how to access the recording and the slides, and all of that will be available on the link that I've put in the chat box and on the San Mateo County Office of Education website.
Fantastic, great. And I'll pause and see if there's any verbal questions from anybody. Okay, awesome. Well, let's move on then to see some of the case study examples. And I'm really just excited to look at that participant list and see that 85 people have joined us to be a part of this. So this is great. I did see one question come through here. Did you recommend this to be implemented on a teacher level or whole school level? That's a really great question. So I think it is going to depend on a case-to-case basis for each school. We do have an example video at the end that's going to be one teacher who volunteered in her community. They did an assessment to figure out could they fit all the kids at school. And after a little bit of shuffling around, using the cafeteria, using the library, using other spaces, they were like, we just can't fit this last group. Can somebody teach outdoors? And she's like, I'll do it. I'll do it all year. And so that was a case where you're going to have most of the kids are going to be learning in regular classrooms, but she's going to be outdoors teaching in an outdoor classroom. So that's a case-to-case basis. We're seeing other parts of the country and other different regions really looking at how to get like half the kids outdoors during the day and doing a switch indoor outdoor. So again, it kind of varies by site. And then somebody's asking, how does this plan fit in with current state guidance against in-person school? That's a really good question. So we have been talking a little bit with county council and other folks about what does it mean to have where if we are on the watch list and we need to move to 100% distance learning, are there exceptions? And there will need to be exceptions likely for students that have special needs, that needs cannot be met at home, or for students where they don't have access to the internet, or students where attendance has become a problem and they will be better served in a facility. And in those cases, schools would need to do a waiver in order to have in-person learning. And as part of that waiver, you can say, we're going to be using outdoor spaces, right? So that's just something to think about for that. Okay, so I think that those were most of the questions. If there's any more, let's just go ahead and put those in the chat box and I'll see what I can do to address them. But I'm gonna actually turn this over to our guests who are here to share, and let me get my slide deck up and share my screen again. So we've got quite a few different perspectives that will be shared today. We're gonna start with a principal perspective. We're so lucky and fortunate to have Dr. Sheila Kratz here with us today, sharing her perspective from Portola Elementary School in San Bruno Park School District. I'm actually gonna click on her slide deck. And then Sheila, you just tell me when to go to the next slide, okay? And I will advance the slide deck for you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be here as the principal at Portola. I've always been an outdoor learning lover. I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, and I have a degree in biology and microbiology. So I'm always looking as a principal for opportunities for students to be outside. Upon arriving at Portola, I saw that there was a big grassy area that would suit our needs well. It also happened to coincide with becoming involved in the environmental literacy cohort through the San Mateo County Office of Ed, and meeting the amazing Andra and her belief in my vision. So we're moving forward with that plan. Just a little bit about where we're at now. So I want to start with the why. I think it's really important whenever we're going to tackle a project is, why are we doing this? And certainly due to the traumatic effects of children sheltering in place for the last 4 months because of COVID, I think there's a very unique and essential opportunity to have children outside. The picture you're looking at right now is a picture of a sensory garden that we built at Portola a year ago. I wanted to start small with something that I could do with just the help of some parents. And so this is my why. The kids are my why, and I think it's really important to start somewhere. When we talk about starting gardens, of course, our big picture plan is to have, raised bed gardens for vegetables and such, but the sensory garden has actually been a really big hit. It's a really great place to start. It has a lot of tactile plants like kangaroo paw and then mint for all these sensory experiences. And I'll get back to that in just a moment. Gardening is really important because it gives kids a place to take risks. Being responsible for things that are growing, living things, having failures, plants die, we know how that goes, and learning those coping mechanisms. We'll go ahead and move on. So one of the biggest things that I'm looking at as far as my own kids here at Portola is the social emotional benefits of it. You can go to that slide, Andrew. I'm not a big wordy person on the slides. Handing over the management of gardens to children is really great as far as building their confidence and self-esteem and responsibility. And according to the Nature Action Collaborative for Children, it's imperative to reconnect children, especially now, with nature and provide a developmentally appropriate approach to education through that in their daily lives. We'll go to the next slide. This is a picture of that same sensory garden. It really, for me as a principal, seeing this and how the children were allowed to use it was really a very interesting experience. The point of the garden is that kids could get into it. As you can see, they are in it. They have these huge magnifying glasses. Everybody has a job. Somebody brings out the magnifying glasses, somebody takes them in, and all of these different things. And it may not seem like a big deal, but what's really was an interesting observation to me is that the children that would gravitate towards this are also children who might not feel comfortable being on playground structures or being involved in some competitive sport, and coming over and engaging with other kids and negotiating who gets to do what, and then also being respectful of their environment. It really lended itself to the development of a lot of traits that I had not anticipated when we decided to build this little space. You can just go to the next slide, which is just an overview of what this looks like from just kind of approaching it. And then you can go to the next slide. So an interesting thing happened, and I think that it's really important to think about, for me especially, because I tend to get very enthusiastic about ideas, so I just jump in and start doing things. And so I corralled parents to start helping to build this sensory garden and everything. So the top picture was the crew that built in the garden. At the time, when I first arrived at Portola, I knew that this bed had been really neglected, and it had this dry wood retaining wall of sorts. So then we put the bed in, and a year later, the bottom picture is parents digging it out. We are now redoing it. So lessons learned is that, but a lot of that has to do with also support from like the district office, which now we are getting a lot more support for projects. So we're going to build in actually a brick retaining wall. The point being, again, is that you are going to start and fail, and you have to be okay with that. It's going to be a better product in the end. We can go to the next slide. And so this is actually part of my focus on environmental literacy. I started a group called Environmental Engineers, and they're building fog catchers, and you may be surprised that there is such a thing. I did not know it myself until I saw them about a year ago. And San Bruno, up on the hill where I'm at, is very, very foggy. You can actually capture fog and use it to water your plants. And so this is a group, and I put these particular pictures up to drive home a point, is that when you have this STEAM emphasis in what you're doing, it's good for all kids, all ages, all abilities. In the first picture, this beautiful woman here is Miss Christy Postal, and she's our library media aide. She is a champion for anything to do with kids and science. It's just great, that she is somebody that wanted to become engaged. And this is a meeting of our environmental engineers, and they're building prototypes. So having those conversations about, okay, well, this is what a real fog catcher looks like, but you're going to build a prototype. And so then it just kind of shows that journey. In the middle picture is them lacing on the screen onto the finished product, which is a very modest fog catcher. And then it would eventually have a tubing in it that drops down into a bucket to catch the water. So all of these things, I think the most important thing for me as a scientist is that getting especially teachers and stakeholders away from the idea that thinking that science is a class. Science is a way that we think about things and that we approach things. And so I think it's really important to keep driving that message home. We can go on to the next slide. And so oops, sorry, that didn't come through for some reason. The future plan, did that not pop back out? Okay. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that happened. So basically the future plan that now I'm so fortunate to have a lot of help with is to have the outdoor learning spaces, which I know Naomi is going to show in a minute, the vegetable garden, a butterfly habitat, a Zen corner. I'm a mindfulness teacher. I teach meditation before school each day, sensory gardening, and then an Ohlone cultural center. The Ohlone are the indigenous people to the Portola area. And so I think that's a really important thing to bring into it. I think the biggest success for me as a principal is the support and enthusiasm of Andra and her team, especially Rebecca and Naomi, who have been working with me. Getting ground level input from our district's facility manager is really critical. He's new this year to that position, and it was a real turning point in getting this launched. Christy Postal, as I mentioned, PTA and our families. I think that one of my big piece of advice for anybody wanting to start this project is find your people. I was lucky to find Andra and her team and the people at my school who have supported me, because as so many things in all of these kind of projects, you're going to meet a lot of naysayers and people who say, you know, no, it can't be done, not realistic, where's the money? But I think just find your people is my biggest piece of advice. And then for me too, it's really important to add that teacher training component. I want to make sure that my teachers feel that, as in transitioning to an outdoor environment, certainly will be, as Andra mentioned, times where you're just taking a class out and a lesson is outside, but that important shift, especially as we talk about science thinking, that from the concrete to the abstract, that's what the difference is in outdoor learning. If you think about, for example, the metamorphosis of a butterfly from a caterpillar, that's a concept that may be taught very abstractly in the classroom, but then when you take it outside and you can actually get that mechanism started with caterpillars, then you are taking something that is concrete to that abstract thinking, which is that higher level thinking that you want to generate in students. And so again, that last slide, I'd just like to thank my team who has been there for me as we started this journey. And I'm excited for Naomi to share what she developed for Portola. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What I'm so excited about this example is it's like taking lessons from already piloting stuff and doing stuff in the past and just thinking now about how to scale it up, right? Like how to get bigger, how to get more students outside more of the time. And after we hear our other case studies, Naomi will share what it looks like to now take Sheila's example here and really scale that up and think about all the other outdoor space and what you can do with it. I'll just pause and see if there are any direct questions that people want to ask before we move into the next case studies. And you can feel free to type it in the chat box or to also just put your voice out there. Okay, great. So I'm not seeing too many questions come through. I did see a question which I can share a response to about the using technology outside in a one-to-one laptop program. And I know that as Sheila kind of starts to think about doing this for more lessons, she'll be making those decisions too, like how do we use technology out there? And one thing that I learned from my experience of doing this with 7th graders is a big piece of bringing the technology and the laptops outside to do regular lessons was making sure that we had shade, right? Because it's really hard to see those screens without shade. But the second thing was kind of something I didn't really anticipate, but the kids, for them to sit and hold their laptop on like logs was not really a feasible thing. So we ended up moving towards benches that go up to tables so that they could do some laptop time. So we ended up putting in 2 different seating areas, one which was for our social and emotional learning time, which was just logs and hay bales. And then the other seating area that was made up of table or benches that convert to tables, so that when kids did more of that laptop time out there, they were able to have that. And so I highly recommend that. So I'm going to move into our next examples here, and let me switch out of this slide deck and move back over to here. The next two examples are coming from community-based partners who have been working this summer to actually pilot summer camp programs using all of the requirements of our 4 pillars in our recovery framework. So making sure that students have masks, practicing social distancing, practicing the health and hygiene requirements, and just really making sure that they're following through on the cleaning practices and all those protocols that we're all going to be experiencing as we get to do in-person learning in the fall. So let me turn it over first to Mary Lou at the Marine Science Institute, and I'll actually pull up her case study that you can also access from our website, which I can put the link in the chat box, but I will put her case study up first so you can see it. You can find all of these case studies from community-based partners right here. So Mary Lou, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Andra. And I have to, again, my name is Mary Lou Seif, and I'm the Executive Director of the Marine Science Institute in Redwood City. And I do have to ditto all the reasons that Sheila said on why we need to get kids outdoors. We, like all of you, were shut down overnight in the middle of March. And what we do throughout the school year is work with school groups to do hands-on learning about mainly marine topics with students of all ages. And then we have a summer camp during the summer where in the past we've had 132 students on campus per day working on our week-long summer camps. Well, we realized right away that things weren't going to be normal for this summer, but we continued to monitor CDC's recommendations, the county health recommendations, the school district recommendations, child care facility recommendations to see what was going to be allowed and how we could modify our program to at least be able to get kids outdoors, because we felt that, and parents were coming to us saying, enough online learning. We need to get our kids outside doing hands-on learning, get them away from the computer screens. So when we saw that there was going to be groups of 12 and 6-foot social distancing seemed to be pretty steady, we went through our site and actually measured. You can see X's all over the spot around there that we marked off 6-foot spots and really saw the maximum number of students that we could safely maintain on our site, and found that it could be 4 groups of 12 of 48. To start this out, we went with 2 groups of 12 as kind of our pilot session. And we went through all of our programs with social distancing, with the safety factors that everyone was putting out there, how we could get the kids outdoors but keep them and our staff safe while doing it. We put on extra staff members whose job is to go around and disinfect sites that multiple kids are using. We are fortunate in that our programs have always been taught outdoors and in small groups. So there wasn't a lot of modifications on that, but making sure that groups were separated, that materials that were at all shared were cleaned in between times, and you know, really make it fun to be able to do these programs safely, but not make the children all nervous and paranoid about it all. We did require masks to be worn, and I personally was concerned about second graders. The camps are 2nd grade through 5th grade, of how 2nd graders would react to wearing masks. And I am pleasantly surprised to say that they did absolutely fine. We had a few mask breaks, obviously, during snack and meal times, but they kept them on, and were just real troopers about that. We had comments from parents. One parent came out and said that this was the first time her child had been face to face with other kids since March. And not only were kids excited to be out there, but the parents were excited to be out there at the same time. During the first week of activities, we did have just some downtime for kids to build sand castles in the beach, to interact with each other, to work on team building, to work on conflict resolution, working in groups again, and really took this time to work on their wellness also. Did we have some glitches? Yes, we had a major glitch right at the beginning in that one of our counselors tested positive for COVID-19. But luckily, it happened during staff training, and we had the protocols that we had. So all during staff training, our staff followed the rules of social distancing, wearing masks. And we also had as a protocol that if they had any of the symptoms of COVID-19, that they were to call in sick and get tested before they came back. She got sick with just one symptom, loss of smell. You think it's a minor symptom, but it was telltale. So she called in sick on Monday, the first day of camp. Luckily, she never had any contact with any of our students, but we had to pull out all of our staff when she was tested positive to get them quarantined and tested positive. But we had our protocols in place of backup, what we needed from everybody before they would be allowed back on site. The letter that I wrote to the parents explaining what was going on, being completely transparent with them, and keeping them updated what happened as far as testing and everything. I got great response from parents and our end of the session surveys about our communication with them, about how we work the whole issue. And I will say I'm also very thankful that no one else got it. We were able to contain the positive person and quarantine, and continue with camp and have a great time. But that being said, policies need to be put in place beforehand and followed, and be prepared for this as we move through this school year. I'm sure that there are going to be more issues like this. Why did we take this risk? When I go outside and see the kids excited, learning, being outdoors, having a sense of normalcy, I think everything was worth it. Being outdoors is the safest place that these kids can be, and I totally believe that moving forward, that this is going to be something that we're going to need to do.
Great. Well, Mary Lou, thank you so much for sharing that example. I think it makes this all a lot more real and practical for people to just really dig into all these great questions. And I saw a lot of questions come through that can mostly be answered by clicking on the policies in response to COVID-19. So you can definitely click on that and get a sense of how they do the temperature checks, how they did other things. Somebody did ask though, did the kids do group work at all, or were they pretty much all working individually because of the 6 feet social distancing?
They did do most of the stuff separated out, 6 feet social distancing, but there were some group activities. And when they did that, we made sure that masks were in place. And
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. And that's totally aligned with the San Mateo County recovery framework in the 4 pillars. So just that understanding of needing to be flexible, right? And to say, like, when you do need to get a little bit closer together, you really make sure that those masks are on, those hands have been washed, and then otherwise you want to do that physical distancing. But we get it. We've got kids who are under 18. They're going to need to get a little bit physically closer at times and to do certain things together. And that is a big part of our why our framework is meant to be flexible from the county office. So thank you so much, Mary Lou. I think there'll be maybe some more questions coming in through the chat box. So as you see them come in, just feel free to answer. I'm going to turn it over though now to Grassroots Ecology, who's also going to share another example of not working with elementary school students, but working instead with working with high schoolers. So I'm really excited for them to share that example. And again, you can find that on our website underneath the case studies right here in the Grassroots Ecology Youth Stewards Program. So let me turn it over to Grassroots Ecology to share that example.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Clemens. I'm the volunteer coordinator at Grassroots Ecology. We are a local nonprofit. We do habitat restoration and environmental education. So basically, we leverage the power of students and volunteers and community members to care for public land. And we work in different parks and nature preserves all across San Mateo as well as Santa Clara counties. And as Andrea mentioned, we have also embarked on creating a summer youth stewards program, or a high school internship as we've been calling it. This is sort of an adaptation of past youth stewards programs that we've had that have been after school during the school year, and we've also had some summer sessions before. The main difference is that we now have closed small cohorts rather than it being sort of like a drop-in series that you can kind of come to whichever ones you want. We actually had an application process for the high schoolers. Spots were open to anyone entering 9th grade all the way through a recent 2020 high school graduate. We had a lot of applicants, almost 120, and we were only able to accommodate around 65 to 70 spots, just so there is a lot of demand for programs like these. We decided to focus more on the older students, since younger ones will have the opportunity to do similar programs with us in the future. And just because of logistics, students driving themselves, and as well as maturity, just being able to follow social distancing guidelines. We had just a little bit more confidence with some of the older kids. But that being said, I think, everyone's done a really good job in following social distancing guidelines. They're very similar to things Mary Lou was talking about. We developed a COVID-19 sort of like field safety policy. Thankfully, the way that we operate during our volunteer and education days is always outdoors, and it's always fairly small groups. So we have had to reduce the size of our cohorts, but it has been pretty similar to the way that we've run things in the past. Some specific adaptations that we've had to make just with, sort of curriculum and the way that the day flows. In doing our restoration activities, we use different hand tools and, buckets and other things. We're out there weeding plants and watering. We kind of pre-assign each student a group of tools, and they store them on site so they don't take them home. So they get gloves, hand tools, bucket, which limits the use of shared materials. We've also been in communication with them weekly, reminding them to bring their own sunscreen, bring their own water, bring their own snacks, because we can't provide those right now. Let's see, we've also done, just on the curriculum side of things, we've also done a lot of nature journaling. So that kind of has replaced a little bit of, like, I guess, bigger group interaction. But we also bought and assigned each student a journal and a pencil and a pen. And we've spent a lot of time giving them prompts and just kind of encouraging them to kind of just be like present and mindful in nature, and just making interesting observations about their surroundings based on different prompts. And yeah, I think we've had really good feedback from students so far. There's some nice quotes in there about how students have responded. I think our high schoolers are also just equally eager to get outside and get away from the screen time and just do something meaningful in the community. So we're also having them do a capstone project that's pretty self-directed. And I think that they are also really enjoying that. And the capstone project is outreach focused. So they need to sort of convey some type of environmental issue or environmental topic, and sort of outreach that topic to at least one other person. So that could be their family, their neighborhood, their school, their friends, kind of whatever it is. So yeah, we put together this program, the program overview for parents, and we've just been, yeah, just trying to be very communicative of what our expectations are. If anyone's feeling sick, they need to let us know as soon as possible, and just really following up with students and parents to make sure that they are staying home if they feel sick, or if there's any potential symptoms of COVID. So we haven't had any confirmed cases, so things have been going well. We're in week 7 of the program, and we have 2 more weeks to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing that really awesome example from Grassroots Ecology. And I'll just note with both of those 2 community-based partners that they're also looking to, you know, they will both be running programs throughout the school year. And as they both shared, like, kids are wanting this, right? And as we are realizing that they're not going to be able to do some of the other activities that they may be used to, like contact sports and other things, having these different opportunities and these different learning opportunities in different ways to engage will be really, really important. We also at the County Office of Ed run a Youth Climate Action Ambassadors program, and we found that every student has stuck with that program. They are just so craving things to do. So we're very excited that all these different programs have had such great attendance. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm actually going to go to gallery screen just to make sure that I can see everybody and see what kind of questions are coming up. So if there's questions in the chat box, or if there's any questions that people want to verbalize right now, we'd love to hear from you. Or also, if there's any other examples from folks that are on this call of work that's happening in San Mateo County or plans that you're putting into place, we'd love for more voices to be heard than the ones that, than just the folks that got to share. So opening it up for questions and also other experiences from our county to be shared.
I was just going to add really quickly that we also have a college intern program as well, and so Kathleen is my coworker, and she's on the call too. Maybe she could say just a couple words about our college intern program, which is a little bit more intensive than the high school program, so there might be some things of relevance there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have very similar protocols to what Rachel highlighted, but we are meeting with college interns. We actually have 2 cohorts of them. We had a pretty high demand for our college intern program, which we usually take 12. It was already a cohort-based program. And this year, because of higher demand, we decided that we were going to really kind of invest in that program, and we took 16 people and split them into 2 cohorts. So that increased our staffing investment, but we're not sort of doing some of our traditional programs and volunteer sessions that we usually do. But we're always in masks. One of the, same as what Rachel was saying, they are responsible for their own tools. They have all their own tools that they're responsible for. One of the things that we've had to think about was we actually do a pretty significant learning proportion with the interns, where basically one of the 3 days that we meet per week has been always a learning day where we try to cover educational content about restoration ecology. And thinking about how to do that entirely outdoors, which is what we've done this year, has taken a real mind shift for me and a lot of our staff. But I think it's been really a good thing for us to sort of, I think we've all heard about like phenomenon-based teaching. It sort of forces us to really use what is there where we're teaching as examples and as a conversation starter. And I think the program is better for it. And I actually think these outdoor sessions are really, I mean, as timely as they could possibly be. I think we have sort of thought of our interns as more of a adults program almost, but I actually feel like these are kids actually who still don't have a lot of opportunities and have really enjoyed the space and sort of the time that being outdoors allows you that is harder when you're surrounded by sort of our traditional learning tools. Like for me, slides, I'm really relying on slides when I'm giving a talk. So I think it's timely. I think kids are really, really eager for opportunities. And I think that one thing collectively that I feel like challenged for us to think about is the transportation piece, because the lack of carpooling and busing options does seem to limit who we are able to attract.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I saw in the chat box some folks asking about, would it be possible for these high school or college students in these programs to work on prepping elementary schools in very small cohorts? And that might be a possibility. We also have community-based partners who have staff that are doing some levels of doing this. So for example, Pie Ranch is another community-based partner that's supporting La Honda Pescadero Elementary School, where they're actually setting up all of the activities for the elementary school students. And then because they're in bubble cohorts, the staff of Pie Ranch is not delivering the lessons, but they've trained the teachers on how to deliver the lessons. So they've prepared the lessons, brought the materials, trained the teachers, and then the teachers are able to deliver that content. And that's how they've been doing their summer school program. So that might be another option potentially for these interns and some of these to really think about how to do these unique staffing models and really get that expertise there. I didn't see too many other questions, so I want to move us towards this last part of our presentation, which is about what kind of technical assistance support you can get from the San Mateo County Office of Ed. And I will share this before I move into that section. We have one other perspective that we're not going to have a time to share the video today, but I will highly recommend this video. It's also posted on our website. It's posted right up here, video, the teacher perspective from a private school. So we have Sonia Myers here, who was that volunteer who said, I'll take all the kids outside. And she really goes through this process of describing like all the things she's had to do as a teacher to prepare herself to teach outdoors all year. She even went to her classroom and tested out like temperature. She took a hose to the top of the outdoor tent to see what it's going to be like when it rains. Like she really did the science-based effort here to figure out what will this feel like. So she's got a really great testimonial that I think for teachers in particular, they will learn a lot from that perspective. But let me talk a little bit about our technical assistance support, and then I'll move it into Naomi to share that case study and what a technical assistance could look like. So some of you might need support with establishing buy-in or getting outdoor infrastructure together or considering staffing. Some of you might want to get more support for training and professional development, which we can also offer, or you might be looking for curriculum support. So there's a lot of different ways that we can help you get started on this. But probably the first and most important is to really understand what's going on at your site. So I'm going to turn it over to Naomi to share what it looked like to do a site case study on Sheila's school on Portola Elementary.
Thanks, Sandra. And I just want to share that it's so great to see everybody on this call really engaging with these issues and starting to think about how they can utilize the outdoor space next year when schools reopen. So for this process of providing technical assistance to Portola Elementary, I worked with Sheila to first off do a site walk where we worked together to really look at the site and think about what were the unique features of this campus that we could use in order to get students onto the school. So Sheila talked a lot about the the purpose of outdoor education and the mission of the school, but I'm just going to review some of the characteristics of it, which will inform this case study. So it's a school with 320 students, and the grade range is pre-K to 5th grade, and there are 11 classes across all these grade levels and an integrated special education class. And what Sheila shared with me is that her COVID response goal was going to be to have 50% occupancy of students on site, alternating days, so in an A-B style grouping. Her school ground, which is pictured here with most of the campus visible, but she does have an extended field in the back, is a total of 10 acres. And you can see that the campus building is made up of 4 wings, but is pretty much one main building altogether. And the other thing that we were thinking about when we were looking at the site is the climate. This has a pretty moderate weather, but as she mentioned earlier, there are definitely days of heavy fog as well as occasional winds, mostly coming from the west. When we were looking at the site too, we were thinking, okay, there is a lot of space, but limited access as far as to restrooms in the field, and little existing shade. So Andrew, you can go to the next slide. So for this image, what you're seeing here is an overview of the site and an analysis for terms of considerations with the environment. And this was done with a volunteer to assist me. So you can go back one more slide, Andrea. But what you're really seeing here is thinking about all of the different environmental concerns that might affect the quality of outdoor learning on your site. And understanding this will help you identify where are going to be the best areas for outdoor learning and where you might need to mitigate some of those environmental concerns so that you can extend the amount of time that you are able to do outdoor learning on your campus. So we can go to the next slide. So we took all of that information, and with it, we were able to identify what I would consider a low investment chance for outdoor learning. So what we're seeing is some shade strategies. Since there is less shade on site, we would be looking at potentially doing some structures to provide additional shade. And for seating, what we are recommending would be to use her stored picnic tables and seating on paved surfaces, and recommending more like movable mats or movable chairs for the turf seating. And in this scenario that you are seeing, this would be a max of 112 students across 8 seating areas. Each seating area is to scale for a 25-foot diameter circle, and you can find some examples of those classroom configurations on the resources that we have mentioned before. So in this scenario, with 50% of students are coming to campus every day, the 70% of those classes could be held outside if they were desired. So we can go to our next slide, which is scenario 2, which is we were building off of scenario 1 to say, okay, how can we get 100% of students who are going to be on-site learning every day? So this is what we are still working on. I'd say it's still developing, especially we have to add in some of these other social emotional learning areas and outdoor gardens that Sheila was talking about. As far as the sensory garden, we do see her native plant and vegetable garden in these 8 raised beds represented by green rectangles. And in this case, we're also thinking about accessibility. So making sure, okay, if we're having more classes out further into the field, providing portable restrooms so that you are maintaining health and hygiene for the kids on your campus. So in this scenario, it is with all 320 students in 11 different outdoor classrooms. And additionally, we are thinking about adding some sound barriers between classes to provide a more high quality learning environment. So really our next steps together with Sheila are going to be to do some more research into procurement and some recommendations about what types of shade structures were going to be the most beneficial for this site. So this is an example of the type of technical assistance that we can provide from the San Mateo County Office of Education.
Awesome. And Naomi just came on board with us in March as our green facilities operations analyst. So she's also tackling outdoor classrooms, also doing zero waste and other things. But this is just one of the ways that we can offer some technical assistance for this particular issue. You can sign up for technical assistance. If you go to our website here, you can sign up. I'll just show you real quick where it is on the page. You can sign up here to get some technical assistance. And we have seen a flood of them come in. So we're going to be responding today and tomorrow to start getting back to you all about it. But it looks like we're just here at time. So I'm going to wrap things up. If you have any lingering questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. We'd be happy to answer your questions. We're super excited that you joined us today, and we really hope that you will take this opportunity to consider how to really leverage outdoor learning during this COVID-19 recovery. We will also post this webinar right here on the website, so we'll make sure to get that up as well, and you can see the slide deck and some of those videos and case studies that were embedded. So thank you to everybody who was able to come today. Thank you to all our guest speakers. And I'll hang out here for another couple minutes if there's anybody who wants to linger and ask a few questions. But otherwise, thank you for taking the time, and we look forward to hearing from you.
We have one participant who raised their hand. So if that was you, you can feel free to unmute yourself, and it's Lana Young.
Lane, but yes.
Oh. Lane, sorry.
Andrea, you mentioned at the beginning that you taught with computers outside, and so I'm just wondering if you can speak to any of the technological considerations that need to go in terms of outdoor classrooms.
Yeah, so for that case, when I was doing it with my 7th grade students, we were right in between 2 buildings. So the Wi-Fi was not really that much of an issue because it was right there by the buildings. But in my last role at Bishop O'Dowd High School in East Oakland, I managed a 4-acre garden space where we ended up expanding. We over-enrolled by 300 students, and we ended up expanding and utilizing that outdoor space. So for that, we really had to figure out how to get the Wi-Fi further into the outdoors. And so we ended up having to do a couple of tower connections and other kind of installations of, I can't remember what all the words are, sorry, but I do know we ended up having to put in a few different router touch points down in the garden space because it was about 2 acres off the side of the building to make sure that kids still had that internet connectivity. But once we got that up and running, everything worked well. So I will say that the farther you get away from the building, the more you would need to consider how to do that kind of like internet infrastructure so that kids can connect if you're looking to use devices. So great question. Other questions from folks here?
I have a question. Sola Grantham here, San Mateo, Foster City. I am very interested in my particular school site. I've already worked on some outdoor stuff for it. I have enough skills to be able to take that Google plan and start dropping down circles on it. But the one that you showed for Portola Valley for the sun angles and stuff, that could be shared across our whole region. We know from 8:30 to 3:30, the sun's in the same place for everywhere. So, can we just have that we can drop it on top of our slide real easy?
Naomi, I don't know how easy that is. You let me know.
I will look into that. I think that one was definitely made specifically for Portola in mind, but what I could do is provide a list of those considerations and how we created that analysis. That would be very easy to do in the short term. And as far as like a map with those or a Photoshop image of those already layered on, that would be a little bit more challenging based on the different configurations of a school site.
And somebody also just asked, can you show how to do the technical assistance again? So if you're looking for technical assistance, it's right here. I'll try to make this a little bit more obvious. We just changed the website a little right before this call, but right here, go ahead and sign up for technical assistance on this little survey. When you click on it, it'll just ask you for some basic questions. Okay, other questions that people have? I'm seeing a question, is there any cost to a school site to have a site visit done? So right now we're doing this. This is just part of the service that we're trying to offer to get people up to speed. And right now we're also working with a group of volunteers across the country who are volunteering their time to help us make these case studies. So right now that kind of site analysis is coming at no cost. I can't say that that will go on forever, but in the immediate, that's definitely how we're doing things. Okay, any other questions that people have?
Andrea,
Mhm.
I had a question earlier in the chat about.
Sorry. Mhm.
No, it's fine. About more permanent structures, like say a 12 by 12 canopy, for example,
Mhm.
versus awnings, which are more price wise about the same, but it doesn't have a structure or frame to it. And so, do you have any guidance in regards to what are some things that you're seeing that are approved? There's CEQA issues.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in that cost estimate tool, we have like shown a bunch of different options. Right now, I don't know if Sharon is on the call, Sharon Danks from Green Schoolyards America. If you are, you can speak to this. But right now we are talking to the state architect office to figure out what is allowed in terms of if you need to do carports or large tents, to really get that question answered. We're trying to come at it from this collective, like, what if every school wanted to do this? You really have to make a decision about this. So we're still in the process of waiting for a response back. Sharon, I don't know if you're here and could answer that any more directly.
That's pretty much the answer.
Okay.
We're looking into it, trying to answer the question collectively rather than individually, so that we don't drive them completely crazy, and so that we can, tell them there are a lot of people who are interested and try to get a coherent single response given back. So we're working on it.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Just because initially I looked at sort of like 20 by 10 and 20 by 40 sort of tents without walls, and put it on fields, which seems very reasonable, and you could serve probably 20 students with physical distance there. But there were CEQA issues, they said, and nothing's approved over a 10 by 10 canopy with a frame structure.
And the they that you talked to was DSA, or?
I think it was DSA, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to take group, like I'll let you know what we find.
They need so we need to put some pressure on them to ease up on those restrictions, because
I think if we ask individually, that it's easier to say no.
Yes, that's a good point. Thanks.
All right, thank you. But yeah, I think that's such a huge lingering question. So maybe Sharon, we just need like a template of letters that can flood them, and then also we'll be like, are you sick of those letters? Answer the question.
Or a sign-on letter of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just chime here and say the first thing you can do right now while we're waiting to find out is really look at your existing shade on site. Using what you already have is going to get you pretty far. And I would say most school sites already have some capacity for having students outdoors in existing shade. So that's at least something you can do while you're getting started, and analyze how many students would be able to serve with those spaces already.
Yeah, and oftentimes one tree can serve half a class, right? Even with that social distancing, if you have one large tree, you can get about half that class out there around it. So that was something we did in the outdoor classroom that I taught in.
Sometimes also on the shady side of a tall building also.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Any other questions or thoughts that people want to get answered here? Okay, great. Well, you know what I'll do? I will just go ahead and end the meeting for everybody then, and we'll get that recording, and hopefully we'll get it up onto the website as soon as possible. So super thrilled that you all were able to join us today, and please feel free to contact us, utilize our website. We also have this email address if you are interested in just shooting us an email as well. Okay, so thank you everybody again. Thank you to our guest speakers. Take care, and hopefully you'll have a great start to your school year.
Thanks, everyone.